Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be discussing another one of these ships being removed in update 0.10.5, and in this video we'll be looking at Graf Spee, the Tier 6 premium German cruiser. To give it a quick overview, it's a pretty great mid-tier ship. It's quite strong, it's got powerful guns, and generally it's really fun to play in. As for whether it's worth picking up, it really depends on what your preferences are. In the past, Graf Spee has been available to pick up for free, most recently in the Odin Dockyard event, and on a previous video I was informed by Harley in the comments that it was also possible to attain around 4 years ago at Christmas, which I looked up and found out it was an event called the Hunt for Graf Spee. The reason I'm bringing this up is that unless you started playing very recently, or you've not had too much time to really play whilst these events have been going on, then there's a good chance you already have her, and so won't need to decide on whether to purchase it or not, in which case you're probably still watching because of the gameplay I've got in the background. Conversely, if you've not got the ship, then I do hope to bring some value with this video, as we'll be discussing Graf Spee, which I hope will help you in your decision to get it or not. Going over the stats, we will start with the survivability of the ship, as in this area it has quite a lot really going for it. So firstly, it's got just under 40,000 HP, which is already pretty amazing for its tier. It's got a heel, which is incredibly good, as well as strong frontal armour, meaning it's a great ship to hold key positions and choke points. This alone makes it a good cruiser to play at tier 6. If you are up tiered, or just come up against a heavily armed battleship, then you will really feel the pain, as the 19mm of belt armour on the bow can fairly easily be overmatched by shells over 272mm, or just above that you've got 16mm of bow armour, which is even easier to overmatch, so just keep that in mind when you are holding a position, depending on what you're holding against. One of the other things to keep in mind is not to get blindsided. Since you've got a slightly raised citadel, this can become your Achilles heel if you don't always keep this in mind when positioning, as you will almost certainly be punished for it. Moving on to positioning, because of the good armour and powerful guns, which we'll cover next, it's no surprise that it does suffer a little with Maneuverability. It's no snail when it comes to speed, but it isn't the quickest either. It's got a top speed of 28.5 knots and a somewhat sluggish rudder shift time of 10.3 seconds, so you'll need to plan your course and position in advance, as it'll take a little longer for you to get around the map. And it is recommended that you do add a Sierra mic signal just to really increase your speed by 5%. This can also be a problem with torpedoes in terms of having that slow rudder shift time, but thankfully this is another great thing about the ship. It's got German hydro, with a ship detection range of 5.5km and torpedo detection of 3.75km, you'll be safe in open water, but also, because of your great guns, it makes it viable to rush smoke screens, especially if you know the destroyer you're pursuing has already dropped their torpedoes. Now, as I said I'd cover the guns, they really are something. They're battleship guns, and specifically they are the same caliber as Scharnhorst guns that are pretty accurate with a sigma of 1.9 and hit like a truck. Unsurprisingly, 283mm can deal with cruisers very easily at times, and as well as those, it also allows you to deal large amounts of damage to unsuspecting battleships, as they will think that they won't be punished for turning and showing a broadside, and then will usually find themselves receiving a very hard-hitting salvo. They've also got a decent range of just under 20km, and if you're finding that your shells aren't doing that well in some games, then you can also switch up your playstyle and use high explosive. Although the shells themselves aren't the best, they're pretty average really, their fire chance is really quite great, as it sits at a nice 20%, which is what you're going to be using to just overall bolster your damage number. Alongside the main batteries, you've also got a pretty decent armament of secondaries and torpedoes. These secondaries will reach up to 5.6km, and with 8 150 and 6 105mm guns, so 4 and 3 on each side respectively, that will really help bump up your damage number at close range. Alongside this, you've also got 2 quad torpedo launchers, and the thing that's impressive is that instead of the 6km that most German ships are equipped with, Graf Spees are an impressive 8. Which is actually more than some destroyers at the same tier, and as well as this, it's better than some of its counterparts such as Nürnberg's, which is at 6km. This is even better with the fact that they have got great firing angles, meaning that you're allowed to be incredibly aggressive with these torpedoes, and you don't need to get as close as you would in other cruisers. And with those incredibly good angles, it also means that you don't really need to expose much of your side. As for anti-air, there's not really too much to say. It's able to defend itself from air attacks rather well, and it's got a maximum range of 5.2km and a pretty decent damage per second, as well as a 2km flak zone, so overall it's not defenceless and it's got some pretty decent AA. Now, considering those are all very, very good points, there has got to be something to really counter that, and that's the fact that it isn't really the stealthiest ship. Its concealment is sitting at a base of 13.1 kilometers. However, the one thing about this ship is that you're not really going to be relying on stealth anyway, so it really isn't that much of an issue. That's really it for the stats. Overall, it's great when it's in tier 6 games, however at bottom tier it could really struggle like any up-tiered ship would. But granted that you play more of a supportive role, you'll certainly be able to hold your own as long as you try your hardest not to expose yourself. And as well as this, another great thing about the ship is if you're somebody who enjoys playing mid-tier or wants a mid-tier captain trainer, then it's the right tier to use in scenarios, so you'll be able to grind captain experience even faster in it, which is great. Or even if you just wanted to get a high point captain in Graf Spee, then again this would be the perfect thing for it because you could just go into a scenario and build your captain up a lot quicker than you would in regular battles. With everything mentioned taken into consideration, as an overview, what can I say? It's a nice ship to have, but not essential. So if you're somebody who doesn't spend all their time at top tier and enjoys some lower to mid tier ships, this is something that's nice to have. And if you get a game where you become top or middle tier, then it is really quite strong and a fun ship to play, which makes for some very enjoyable games. And on that note, this concludes the discussion. If you've enjoyed the video or found it useful in any way, then make sure to drop a like. And if you want to see more videos from myself, then consider subscribing, as overall it just really helps the channel out. Now, with all that said, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one.